Hi, and welcome to Growth Talks podcast. It's a place where you can find suggestions, tools, techniques, ideas, and so much more on personal and professional growth coming from experts in these areas. My name is Snezhana. I am a business coach and a leadership trainer, and I am your host for today. It is such a pleasure to introduce my guest for today. He's a fellow coach, but also a trainer for trainers, and he's a leader in the application of improvisation in the UK and around the world. Paul, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Shazana. Lovely to be here.
It's so great to have you, especially since you deal with such an interesting topic like improvisation and then public speaking in general. So, can you share a little bit about yourself to kind of get us started today?
Sure. I set out as a journalist in my first career. I don't know if you remember newspapers. They used to
Yeah.
be very popular.
Yes.
I worked on one of those. And while I was doing that, I got introduced to improvisation in the form of comedy improvisation show.
Mhm.
Just went along to see one and was amazed at how they did this. They were doing it without a script,
Right.
without rehearsal, without preparation, without a director, all of which seemed really strange and counterintuitive. So I used my journalistic hat to interview the people that were doing it and found out more and just got absolutely entranced. So I set up my own improvisation group.
Mhm.
Then I became a comedy producer for the BBC, working in radio, network radio here in the UK. And from there, after I left the BBC, became freelance trainer, coach, and always used improvisation in what I do.
That's great. That's it, and it's such a good skill to have.
It's vital, and luckily it's a skill everyone does have.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, that's good to know. Then I
it
guess
is,
we'll be exploring it a little bit as we go with
yes.
today's talk. But it's funny you mentioned the improv show. There is one here in the city where I live, and I love going to those because, like you said, it sounds like, and I know they do prepare a little bit, but
Oh
there's so
yeah.
much interaction with the audience that you
Mm.
don't really know what they're going to serve you. And being able to just embrace that and go with the flow, uh, I agree. It's amazing. It's great.
It is. There are of course structures and formats, so you can train, you can prepare, and get better at it. But
Right.
within that, there's freedom of what's going to happen that particular time.
Right. Yes, amazing. And today we're going to talk a little bit about improvisation related to public speaking. So how, why it's important, where can we find it, how do we find it, and so on. So I would like to start more general at the beginning. So what do you've worked with many individuals, many companies throughout your career. What have you noticed are some of the challenges that business people have when speaking in public?
Well, on the whole, they don't like it. So that's quite a challenge.
Right, right.
And
I've
that's
seen that too.
understandable. It's not a natural thing to stand up, be the focus of everyone's attention, and have to deliver. So it's an uncomfortable setting by its
Mm,
nature. So we do have to practice and prepare and be ready for it, and
right,
see how the advantages outweigh the discomfort of it.
right, right.
We can do that by people being well prepared, so
Mm,
structuring their presentation and spending as much time on themselves and their own level of confidence and readiness as they do on the materials.
right,
Typically, they spend 95% of the time on the words that they're going to say and 5% of the time on getting ready and doing some breathing and feeling comfortable with the room or checking out what the room looks like.
right.
We could switch that balance to much closer to 50-50. That would be a
Yes.
good first tip.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I was going to ask what is that we can do to be more comfortable. I wanted to ask, you said being comfortable working on the personal as well as on the content, as in this the speech. What can we do on the personal level? Because a lot of people that I've talked to, they have this stage fright, but the stage fright is I start breathing heavily, I stand there and I freeze. I have this fear of I'm not going to know what to say, everybody's going to laugh at me. So, do you have any tips on what we can do to kind of minimize that panic that we get into before going on stage?
Yeah, first recognize that it's perfectly natural to feel that. and remind yourself that those nerves are based on adrenaline
Hmm.
flowing through the body. And it's a case of using it to your advantage and
Right.
taking the excitement, reminding yourself what you're there to do, and that the audience wants you to succeed.
Right.
Nobody's
Right.
come for a bad time.
I like that. I love that. That's a really good thought to have in your mind.
It's a good thought to have, and you can bring that into your stance of, I've got something to offer. That's why they've invited me here. The audience is interested to hear it, and we're going to have a conversation. If
Mm,
it was just delivering content, we could send them an email.
that's a really
More
good
efficient.
point.
We can read 3 times faster than we can listen.
Absolutely. That's a good point. That's a very good point. Thank you so much for sharing that. I read somewhere, you mentioned adrenaline. I read somewhere that our feeling of anxiety and excitement comes from the same place, but it
Yes.
is our interpretation that our brain sees it as either bad or anxiety or exciting where we get in excitement. So I think for me, what often works is reminding myself that I'm so excited and not worried about
Yes.
a particular thing, and sometimes that helps.
Good. Yeah, I would agree completely. It's an exciting opportunity. We're going to take that opportunity. We're going to create an interesting interchange live in the room with these people on
Right,
that day, something you couldn't do anywhere else. It's never going to happen again. And of course, that does connect with the improvisational possibilities of what can happen uniquely on this occasion because the audience take an interest in something, or they ask you a question about something, or a
right,
new thought occurs to you in the moment. You've
right,
got all your expertise, you've got structure. Now play with it.
right, right. So, Mike, that leads to my next question, which is why is interpretation important? Why is improvisation important? And if at all, and then how does it play into public speaking?
So even if you have a script, you never deliver it exactly the same way twice. There's a
Mm,
different environment, there's different people there, you're feeling different. There's always an element of something that's going to happen uniquely on the day. And we often talk about organizations and presentations as if that isn't true.
right,
And recognizing that it is true is a good start. It goes
right,
back to what I was saying about us all being improvisers. We're not learning some obscure skill. We improvise every day. How many conversations do you have in a day?
right. Oh,
14,
yeah.
I think.
D Dozens. I mean, even if
Dozens.
we start with myself,
Hmm.
that's a lot to start with. And then,
Yeah.
of course, yeah, clients, friends, family.
And they're not scripted. They may
No,
have a structure or a path that they're likely to follow, and that's fine, but you're familiar with that. So
right,
that's comfortable. And then your attention is on, well, what do I say next? How
right.
do I respond to what they said? And we remind ourselves to be in the moment, here and now,
Mhm.
present, which is a condition and a characteristic of improvisation. And it's available to everyone. And we're all able to do that and have experienced it. If you can really get that focused, then you get into a state of flow. And if you
Okay.
bring your nerves and your adrenaline and your excitement when you're giving a presentation into that here and now focus in a positive way,
Mm,
because we're going to enjoy it, the audience is going to enjoy it, then we can go into a state of flow and have a really exceptional occasion, really
right,
enjoy it. Everyone gets something out of it and it becomes exciting and memorable for everybody involved.
right. How do we prepare for it? Are there any certain prerequisites that we need to have to be able to feel comfortable with improvisation?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot you can do to be more comfortable with improvisation. Can I share my
Yes.
life pass model?
Yes, please do.
There we go. Do you see that?
Yes. All
So
right.
this is distillation of 8 ideas that, for me, capture the whole idea of improvisation,
Hmm.
principles, and techniques that are available to anyone to use at any time. And they work particularly well in presentations. So
Okay.
the first thing is let go. And we're going to let go of perfectionism. We're going to let go of how exactly we expect it to go if it doesn't quite go that way. Let go of the plan if we need to. We have a plan, and that's fine, but we're ready to let go of it, and that will be okay if the circumstances occur. I've mentioned inhabit the moment, being here and now, bringing yourself to be very present. Notice those feelings. If it's uncomfortable to step out, go, okay, it's uncomfortable to step out, but I'm doing it for a good reason, and I can use that discomfort to my advantage.
Right.
Freedom within structure. You've got a structure for your presentation, you know, beginning, the middle, the end, maybe a few key points you want to make.
Right.
Perhaps there's some slides and some quotes, and then play within that, within the structure, to find that freedom of where's the audience responding? Are they enjoying my sense of humor? Do they want some more facts? Would they like to ask some questions at any point along the way? Why not? Let's turn it into a dialogue. And we embrace the uncertainty of what the audience might bring. Because again, that's realistic. That you can't know for sure what they want.
Absolutely. And I have to say, we rehearse as if nobody's going to interrupt us. We rehearse as if I'm going to go on stage, say what I have to say, get off, and that's it. I'm done. So no interruptions, no hands up, nothing. And I think with that, we're sort of kind of inviting a non-dialogue situation in the first place.
Because we think that will protect us from these worries we have.
Right.
But we're there to have that exchange, the co-creation of something with the audience. So let's embrace that uncertainty, see what they're going to bring, and be willing to go with it. I often start a presentation with, well, I could talk about these 3, 4, 5 things. What would you be interested to hear about first?
Oh, nice.
It makes it much easier for me to prepare.
Absolutely. Have you ever been caught off guard?
Sure, but that's okay. Again, let go of this perfectionism of I need to know everything, because I know I don't, but we'll find a way between us. And I've got some knowledge and some stories and some expertise in there, which we'll arrive at eventually.
Right.
I'm not suggesting wing it completely. I'm not suggesting being incompetent. I think people should know their stuff and be able to use the technology that we expect them to use and put out a professional presentation. Within that, improvisation is an additional value and a benefit and a more realistic way of looking at it.
Right. When you and I talked before this podcast, when you and I talked, you mentioned, improvisation comes at a later stage. So if we're just getting into public speaking, or we're new at a position and we have to do presentations, I'm sure it's really hard to improvise at the very beginner level. Am I right?
Yes, and maybe long into a career as well. I've done some TEDx talks, and because they seem to me to be important in some way, I've scripted them sometimes and pretty much read them word for word. And that has the advantage of definitely include everything I wanted to say.
Right.
I've got some good phrases, but it does lose some of the spontaneity and that connection with the audience. So it's a trade-off.
Right.
There's going to be a temptation. And for beginners, you might very well want to clutch that script and hold on to it. But I think that is a starting point, because that does, as you say, keep the audience at a distance, and they don't get so engaged. They don't feel that they're part of it by asking questions or putting in their opinions.
Right. Okay, I'm gonna let you continue with the list, but so many questions come to mind.
Okay, so we're halfway through. Play to play. We all know about playing to win in sports and in business and in life. This is play to play, which says don't just aim to win, aim to experience everything that game has to offer. And in public speaking, playing to win might be I got my 3 points across. Playing to play might be I create new relationships with people.
Oh, that's
discover something new between us.
I love this. I love play to play. I think so far that's my favorite one.
Okay, it's the most playful. And if you can get a playful atmosphere, that leads to enjoyment and more humor, and people will be more receptive to the message too, whatever that message is.
True. I think often we're taught that way as well, to go and deliver. So the goal is to deliver. We never think, or rarely do we think about Well, how about connection? Like what you just said. I love that. I love because I'm here to connect with people, make new friends, acquaintances, learn something from the audience that may help me grow as well. Because if I just come to deliver and deliver, I've helped somebody maybe, but I haven't grown.
I can deliver my book. I've written several books,
Yeah, and we'll
and that's
share
fine
all
though.
of
They're
that.
full of content.
Right.
They're an interesting read, but that's not a presentation. A
Mm,
presentation is much more, in my mind, a conversation and an opportunity for discovery between people, not just that one-way download.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So far, play to play is my thing.
Play to play. Well, you're going to like accept and build because this is the classic improvisational phrase that everyone knows. Yes, and.
Right. Okay. Yes, I'm familiar with that one.
Yes. And I've changed it to accept and build because it's not the words yes and, it's the stance of accepting what's there and then building on it, which may
Mm,
include the words yes and, but may include lots of other ways of doing it physically, verbally, and
okay.
so forth.
Okay.
Short turn taking. This is the secret one.
Okay. I'm excited for secrets.
Well, we're doing that now. We're taking short turns. I could give a very long lecture,
Hmm.
and if that's the appropriate thing, then fine. But in presentations, long lectures are old hat, I think, as we
Yeah.
say.
Yes.
Bringing in more of the interchange of what questions do you have so far? What would you like
Right.
to respond to from what we've said? What are your thoughts on this? And then respond to that. So we're taking turns back and forth.
Right.
That's
Right.
very improvisational
Okay.
characteristic that we take turns. If you watch improv on stage as a comedy show, it's
Right.
lots of turn taking, sometimes one word each at a time or one sentence each at a time, which takes it to an extreme. It's good practice.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And interesting that you mentioned that. It reminded me of in my studies we did the study of translation, and when we talked about simultaneous and consecutive translation, um, at the very beginnings, people would wait for the entire speech before they translate. So a translator would sit there for like 20 minutes listening to the speaker, taking notes and trying to memorize as much as possible, and then translate it. And for me, I don't think I'd ever be able to do it. And then, of course, with time, it changed to you do a little bit of talking and then the person translates, and so you go back and forth. And so I guess we're getting closer to improvisation.
Yeah, and much more interesting for participants and audience.
Right, absolutely.
I've done some work where I've been translated in countries that I visited,
Uh-huh.
and you might say 4 or 5 sentences.
Right.
The translator then just says one very short phrase.
Yeah,
What have you missed?
yeah, there's also that aspect, right?
Yes. You say something very short and they give a very long speech. So I'm thinking of one in particular who had his own views on the topic.
Yeah. But well, I guess it's not in theory what is supposed to happen, but I guess life is never all about theory.
Yeah, we enjoyed it because
Right.
ready for anything.
Right. Okay, we have one more
Yeah, well,
to
that's an
go.
illustration of it. Spot successes.
Okay.
So it's easy to beat ourselves up on something that's not working. But
Right.
if the audience is enjoying this very strange translation, for example, well, that's a success.
Right.
Maybe unexpected, and I can work with that. So improvising is making use of what's there.
Mm,
And the bit we want to make use of is the bits that work and very quickly let go of the bits that don't work with
right.
disposability principle. If it's not working, fine, ditch it quickly as you can and move on to something that's more productive or more fruitful.
Right. That's and I think that in itself is a great skill for us to have just as human beings, personally or professionally, being able to let go quickly, take the good out of it and just move
Yes,
move forward. That's great.
it reconnects with the let go at the beginning, let go of things that aren't working,
Right.
hold on to the things that are,
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
evolution works.
Yes, I love this. Thank you so much for sharing all of these points. It's so great to see that there are simple suggestions and simple things that we can do to really change the way we feel on stage and to be able to improvise better. And what you said, I mean, I'm assuming it doesn't only refer to the stage. All of these things, they can be used in just life in general.
That's a really good point, Susanna. None of them say anything about the stage
Right.
or performing, though they can all be used by stage performers. Then they can be used by presenters. We've looked at the applications as we went through there.
Mm,
And as you say, their life skills. We can use them more broadly. And
right.
that for me is the joy of applied improvisation, is that you can find the different places to apply it, even with consistent set of principles. They have slightly different interpretations or manifestations each place we go, but
Right.
recognizably that's improvisation, and it's a useful skill pretty much anywhere.
Right. Right. What do you think makes it hard for us to improvise? What are the what's stopping us from embracing this skill?
That's a good question. And I'm not sure that it's quite right that we're stopped from doing it. I think people do it, but don't
Uh-huh.
recognize that they're doing it. And then they don't see that it would work well for them in some other arenas as well. So you might have an expectation that public speaking is the words I'm going to say, and I'm going to say them all, and nobody's going to get any kind of word in edgeways while I'm doing it.
Right.
And that's
Right.
missing out on the possibility. So sometimes our expectations or other people's expectations and assumptions could
Hmm.
be challenged.
Right. Agreed. Oh, definitely agreed. And I think through coaching alone, that's what we do. We keep asking, why?
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
always, well, how do you know that? How did you come to that conclusion? And
Yes.
help people understand it. You don't necessarily have to change it if you don't want to change it, but just understanding where it's coming from and what it's doing for you or not doing
Yeah.
is definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah. I do activities in workshops where we discover that we're applying all kinds of strange rules to ourselves. And
Right.
by bringing them into the light, we can question them, and we can say,
Hmm.
I don't need that anymore. That was useful when I was 12 years old, but no longer applies.
Right.
Or like, you could say, yeah, I do that, and I'm glad I do it, and I'm going to keep it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're now in a position to make conscious choice and expand the possibilities,
Right.
which for me is what coaching does, expands people's possibilities.
True. I would have to agree there. There was one thing you mentioned, one of the points that you mentioned was being present, being in the moment.
Yes.
And this is absolutely something we're taught as coaches to be there and listen to the client. And then you don't have to have a ready answer right away. Um, so let's say we do get in the moment in on stage or when we're doing a presentation. Do you have any suggestions on how to get back to the structure? Because I feel that, as you're getting, of course, the more practice you get, the better you get at this. But let's say, you get a little bit carried away. How do you go back to your original agenda?
For me, it'd be quite simple. I'd have a piece of paper, maybe six
Right.
or seven things written on it,
Hmm.
and I'll have a look and go back to the next thing that was the next topic. I'm sure people have their own ways of getting themselves back on course. Thank
My
you.
last question before we leave for today, do you have anything to add to what we've already discussed? Any points that you want to share in addition to what you've said so far?
Yeah, I would say to people, trust yourself. Trust yourself in the moment, that it's not going to go horribly wrong because you've chosen to be a little bit freer, let some of the shackles go, and allow your humor, allow your improvisation to come out. It's going to be fine. And when you've had a little deviation from the plan, that you will get back to it. It's not a major difficulty to do that. It's quite straightforward. So trust yourself, and if you get that intuition for now's a moment to say something extra or remember a story that's pertinent, bring it in. The audience is going to enjoy that, and they'll like that being in the moment.
Right, right. I was also at some point or listening or reading. And when we are trained as teachers, because I have a teaching background,
Mhm.
we're trained to think, well, nobody knows exactly what your plan was. Even if you
True.
have the agenda, you share the agenda maybe with the organizers, the people at the event, but they know points. Nobody knows exactly what you're going to say during your presentation. It's just
Yes.
you. So
Yes.
if if you decide to not respect your own script to the letter, that's fine. It's just you're the only one who's going to know that and nobody else.
So true. I share as little as possible about what's supposed to happen, so that there's less holding it. There's some academic conferences you have to provide every word in advance.
Right.
Then you go up there and you read every word. It's
Oh,
a complete waste of time.
yeah,
It's
but
already there in the conference proceedings. I want them to be doing something different on stage than they're doing on the page.
right, right. And another thing I heard was, and I sometimes do it depending on what the setting is and the formality, I guess, of the speech, but just owning that you lost your train of thought or owning
Yeah,
that, just saying, oh, I wanted to ask something, but I don't, now it's gone. And then just
yeah,
move on to something else. But I think we're so afraid to seem silly or unprofessional or not prepared enough. And so,
yeah,
because of that fear, we have to make it perfect. But just accepting that we're humans and that, okay, well, it's gone. The train of thought is gone, and there's no world is going to end because we forgot a sentence or two. So, just owning that and saying it out loud and moving on.
yeah. Let people know where you're at.
Right,
It's. I had 3 points. I've told you two of them. I can't remember the third one.
right.
It'll come back if it's important.
And
Write
I
to me
think it makes
afterwards.
Yeah, and it makes it a little bit more authentic too, to show that
Yes.
you're still human, and it's okay to make a mistake. Okay, Paul, thank you so much. This has been so great. I feel like there's so much more to learn from you. If people want to work with you or get in touch with you, what are some of the ways that they can do that?
You can find my website, www.impro, IMPRO,
Hmm.
short for improvisation,
Hmm.
dot org, org.uk.
We'll leave the links and everything
Yeah.
that you share so that everything is going to be
Okay.
in the description for people to be able to access it.
If you Google me, Paul Z Jackson, luckily there's not many of them around. You'll find me. Read my books
All right,
if you want
definitely.
lots of content.
Well,
Well,
I think it's a good way to learn as well.
it
Some
is.
like listening, some are more
Yeah.
visual, but books are always a good way.
I'm a huge fan of books, and then we can meet in person and have fun, improvise.
Absolutely. Oh, I would love that. So I'll definitely let you know if I'm somewhere in the UK area. And I know
Yeah,
it's a big country, but if that happens, or if you're somewhere closer to my region, that would be great. But yeah, okay, guys, for everybody else, if you want to get in touch with Paul, you know how we'll leave all the links. We'll leave also the links to the book. So if you enjoy reading, you can take a look at that too. Okay, so I'm gonna do the formal part now. So if you like the content, if you like what you're hearing, please feel free to like us, subscribe, do whatever you need to be able to follow us and keep listening. Paul, again, thank you so much for being here. And thank you guys for listening. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
thanks very much.